Hello, you amazing friends. I am honored to be live streaming with the amazing Hec Salgado. How are you tonight, Hec? What's going on?
Hello, dear sir. It's so good to see you. Obviously, night for you. I'm here in the UK, and for me, it's just coming around to 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's my morning. I'm really good. I'm very happy to see you, Edward.
It's such a pleasure to have you with us, Hec. And the topic of the day has been intermittent fasting. We're talking a bit off camera. Please, let's start the conversation again for our wonderful fans on LinkedIn. What were we talking about intermittent fasting before, Hec?
Well, you actually started off, Edward, and that was you did a post a few days ago. You then sent it to me and said, "Look what I have found." I've seen it fly by, but I hadn't focused on the numbers. And interestingly, you mentioned that, and it shows in the post that 72% of people understand it and actually follow some form of intermittent fasting. Now, what's interesting about this is that's about 3/4 of people. I feel that if you'd asked this question maybe 24 months ago, maybe 3 years ago, you would have been lucky to have got a third in. And the reason for this has been is a number of books have come out, a number of famous and well-known people have come out supporting it. And as you alluded to it before, the beauty of intermittent fasting is not a diet. It's a way of living, right?
Yeah.
And unlike most diets that tackle one thing or tackle the other, and you can't eat this, you can't eat that, and you have to have shakes or you have to have funny food. With intermittent fasting, technically, you eat whatever you're eating, but you really cut in a window. And that's what's fascinating. So, Edward, back to yourself. What's your experience on intermittent fasting?
Oh, so outstanding. So long story short, so throughout my life, I've been slim most of my life, right? Most of my life I've been slim. I've had a few times where I've been a bit chunky, but majority of my life I've been slim, right? Now, what was interesting is that every time I've become slim, I've always done it through dieting, right? Always done it through dieting. And it's a difficult process because, as you know, when you diet, you're always fighting yourself, right? And I believe in the saying, diets do not work, right? Because if diets work so well, then why did I put on 20 kilos during the lockdowns, right? And that's what happened to me. Again, my fault. I just went crazy. I put on about 20 kilos during 2 years of lockdown. And what was interesting, I got a lot of serious health issues from that. You know, my back went out. I was getting high blood pressure. It was terrible. Anyway, a lot of people, everyone understand how health does that. But what was interesting is that I just could not get the weight off until I tried intermittent fasting. And here's the biggest thing that really blew me away of intermittent fasting. It is not a diet, right? It is not a diet because the problem is, as you know, if you diet, you're always hungry and you've always got urges that you need to fight, right? If that makes sense, right? And we've got a few friends of us, got old friend Stella Bella. Stella, we love you. Stella Bella said you were pleasantly plump. Thank you, Stella. You're just awesome. I would say I was unpleasantly plump, but I love you, Stella Bella. And we've got Aaron Ripper with us. Aaron, you're a ripper. I'm doing that. Anyway, what I found that intermittent fasting does, and of course I want to hear your reactions on this one, is that intermittent fasting actually solves the problem because when you start doing intermittent fasting, your stomach shrinks. You don't feel hungry anymore. I had a big addiction to sugar and chocolate. The intermittent fasting broke that sugar addiction. In other words, what happens now is I now eat less without any trying. I don't have these urges I need to fight anymore. It's like the urges have been removed. What are your reactions, Hec? Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think you really hit it on the head there, Edward. And then for people sort of listening to us that go, okay, I get the theory, but how do I apply it to my life? I'm having 3 meals a day. I'm having a snack in the morning, a snack in the afternoon, maybe some supper. How do we actually work this? Well, what I do with my clients, and it's really simple. Let's just say we start off with 3 meals and 2 snacks. One of the easiest things to do is get that breakfast without even changing the type of breakfast. We could talk about increasing your protein and stuff, but let's keep it super simple. All you have to do, if say your breakfast was say 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, the easiest thing to do is to push it back by 1 or 2 hours. So you have basically like a brunch, say 11 o'clock. So what have you actually done at a physiological level? You've told your body there's no food. You're going to have to wait a couple of hours to eat. So say you had your dinner at 7 o'clock in the evening. 7 o'clock in the morning is 12 hours. If you then have your breakfast at 8 o'clock, that's 13. If you now push that back by a couple of hours to say 10 o'clock, you're already fasting for 2 hours. Now you can obviously push that back a little bit till eventually, guess what, Ed, what you and me have done in the past? You skip your breakfast. You do this for a number of days, and one day you go, do you know what? It's already 10, I'm not hungry. I've just had a coffee and I feel okay. Then it's 11, then I'm a bit busy. I'm going to have lunch in an hour and a half time. Do you know what? I'm going to skip my breakfast. And before you realize, you fasted till lunch. And little things like this, you wouldn't have to do it every day, right? Personally, Edward, I probably have a breakfast a week. I normally do a brunch on a Friday, which is a nice day to do it. The rest of the time, I eat perfectly 2 meals a day. Okay, so the point I'm making here is that you gradually improve and you gradually shift towards eating in a shorter eating window. That is key. And of course, you can keep on obviously extending this.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's funny that you say that because I love it. And that's pretty much exactly what I did. And what I do these days as well is I like to stop eating by 8 p.m. So I'm not a fan of eating after 8 p.m. What I did, however, and you'll laugh at this, is that to get rid of the last of my weight, I actually would stop eating at 5 p.m. So I literally would eat just between 12 and 5 p.m. in a given day, right? But what's fascinating about, and this is the point I want to make to all our listeners out there and viewers, and thank you for watching, by the way, smash that like, share, comment too, and connect with Hec, is that it removes the urge. This is what no one tends to talk about with intermittent fasting. So again, when you diet, right, you're always fighting yourself. You're always fighting your urges, and your urges are going to win. You know, your urges are infinite, but willpower is finite, right? So you're eventually going to lose, which has happened to me. But when you're fasting, what it does is, again, it changes your biochemistry. It removes the urges, and because there's no urge, there's nothing to fight against, and it happens effortlessly. And to me, that's a big thing. Intermittent fasting is not a diet. It's a way of, it's a way of living and all that, but I love how it reprograms your biochemistry. Can you expand on the biochemistry side and give it some more science than my vague anecdotes?
No, but funnily enough, Ed, when you actually talk about the biochemistry itself, you're hitting the nail on the head. If we dive a little bit deeper, what intermittent fasting does, right? Because it forces the body to pull out sort of ketones and to start working, burning your fat, right? Guess what? You get a much more regular insulin level. That's what it really does. You alluded to before to reducing your sugar content, right? But because you have not been eating for a number of hours, there's nothing to spike your insulin. The way insulin works is when we have food, right? Our insulin is going to move to absorb the carbohydrates from the food, the sugars, in very simple terms. But you haven't been eating for 3 or 4 hours. So guess what? There's nothing to move your insulin. And because your insulin gets more stable, guess what's the secondary effect of that? You have greater insulin sensitivity. What does that mean? You need less insulin for your day-to-day. So if you've been doing intermittent fasting for a month, by the end of your month, your insulin sensors and your sensitivity is much better than what it was at the beginning. So you're basically, your hormone system, where your insulin is made in the pancreas, guess what? Your hormone system becomes more efficient. And that's where the big magic, as you mentioned previously, it works at that sort of at that root level. You're absolutely right, at the physiological level. That's the beauty of, you could do any diet you want, but when you do intermittent fasting, it really goes to the root cause.
And what I love about intermittent fasting is it is free. Anyone can do it. This is the key things, right? Because one of the objections you hear, like, let's say you tell someone, and I'm saying this figuratively, get a gym membership, go running 5 kilometers a day, whatever, right? I get it. That takes effort. It costs money for gym memberships, but intermittent fasting, it's free. You can just start it now. And it doesn't, in fact, it actually saves you money because you end up consuming less food, right? And it's funny what you say. it's funny what you're saying before, and I agree with you. A few years ago, intermittent fasting was a real taboo, but now it's really becoming the mainstream. Do you want to expand on that, Heck? Why is intermittent fasting breaking into the mainstream?
This has really come from a scientific background. Some of the big doctors and scientists have really been pushing intermittent fasting. Now, you're obviously aware that some people talk about the obese epidemic. And when you look at the graphs and the numbers in the last 10 years, and this goes down to child obesity, obesity at any age. And this is something that we know all about this. We got so much information, yet we are sort of fatter and more obese. To compound the problem, we've just been through a 2-year pandemic. So we couldn't go out. We've been stuck at home. So this has just compounded the problem. Now, a lot of scientists, and funnily enough, we've known about intermittent fasting and fasting itself for hundreds of years. If you think about it, and I know you're a religious man, a lot of the great religions in the world, Christian, Muslim, and others, have a form of absence of food, right? From Lent, the Christians, to Ramadan, the Muslim. This is something we've known about for 2,000 years, right? And also what we know is the man evolved from being a hunter-gatherer. And let's be honest, 10, 12,000 years ago on the plains of Africa, guess what? There wasn't any supermarket. You'd get some berries, you'd kill an animal, you'd eat. But what if you didn't eat for 2 days? What happened? Let me tell you something interesting. You alluded before to the physiological level. They did loads of studies out in the States. And what turns out to be, if you've got 2 groups of people and one of them does fasting and the other one doesn't, after a number of hours, when you measure their growth hormone, you'd be amazed to know that the fasting group, the growth hormone has gone sky high. And you go, why? And it's purely from a biological, if you want, inherited element. If you were on the plains 10,000 years ago trying to get food and you haven't eaten for 2 days, your body's saying, we need to preserve our muscle, get the growth hormone so you can hunt the animal. Not we're going to kill you off. So that's exactly how we've evolved. We've evolved not to eat for a number of hours, and your growth hormone goes up, and it's really good for your hormones. One of the things I like doing to sort of cap this off, the last week in the month, I like to fast for say 50 hours. So I give you what I've done this week, right? This is the last week of the month. So I switched off eating. I had a lovely Sunday lunch, which I prepared myself, salmon and potatoes and all the trimmings. I did that on Sunday. I finished by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I switched it off, and I now have dinner this evening. So I've gone from Sunday to now, which is about, you can do the maths, 51, 52 hours. I'm not feeling at all hungry. I'm having a coffee now. I've had water. I went training this morning on empty stomach. I'll be going running in a little while after I've spoken to you. That'll be my training done for today, and then dinner. And my body, guess what? No worries, because I regularly fast. This is the long one that I do once a month. So I'm very much an advocate of it. And as a health hack or tool, it's absolutely brilliant.
So the irony is, based on what you're saying, I couldn't agree with you more, is that intermittent fasting is actually natural. In fact, us having 3 meals a day is actually not natural. So intermittent fasting is actually going back to our primal state, isn't it?
That's correct. 3 meals a day, as long as they're bad. Again, we don't want to give the impression that you can't have 3 meals a day. There's nothing wrong with 3 meals a day, right? If you're working on site, and you need to have loads of food coming in because you're burning 3,000-4,000 calories, then get big breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a couple of snacks. But for a lot of us, Ed,
white-collar workers sitting in an office, there's no excuse.
Absolutely. Many of us workers sitting in an office, 2 meals a day will be ideal. Or maybe a small breakfast, a moderate lunch, a small dinner. You have to manage the carbs that you get in so you don't just literally put on the weight. That is absolutely key. So 3 meals a day is fine, but if you can reduce it. And the other thing, Edward, is to play with the meals. One day I'm going to have 2 meals. One day I'm going to have 3 meals. And guess what? One day a week I'm going to go OMAD. One meal a day. I'm going to miss my breakfast, my lunch, and go for dinner. So all these different options. And people need to play There's a lot of literature out there. Just need to play with some of the options and see what works for them, and they may find it's an amazing tool.
You just remind me of something funny. So probably about maybe 8-9 years ago, before I met Lassie, not probably about a year or two before I met Lassie, I went overseas on a business trip, and that included about a month in the UK. I actually went there to get mentored and educated and sort of get my business working. It was really good. And I stayed at a beautiful place. I know you're from the UK, so you'll appreciate this. You know Premier Inn? You know that inn chain? Fantastic inn chain.
Yep, I stayed there last week in Glasgow. So, yep, agree.
Yeah. So I think they're UK only, but Premier, it's on a funny note. I'm still subscribed to their emails 8 years later, and I love them. So I fell in love with Premier Inn. They were like just fantastic, right? And I remember Premier Inn was renowned for amazing food, and it had amazing food. And I remember one morning there, I met with one of my mentors, Stefan, great guy, and we went to breakfast, and the breakfasts, and everyone was laughing at me. I could not eat a British breakfast. So what was interesting is that I was quite slim at the time. Literally, you had your plate, right? And this is what was served. And I'm probably missing about 5 items. Literally, I had baked beans, bacon, egg, that black pudding. You know that black pudding, that British black pudding. Pickles. I think it had some sauerkraut. 2 sides of toast. And it came with coffee, and there's a few other things that are beyond my level of size.
Maybe some fried tomatoes. You're probably missing the sausage.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. There you go. Yeah. But basically, what the joke of it was, and everyone was making fun of me, the amount of food that was served to me at Premier Inn, great hotel, by the way, I couldn't even eat half of it. Like literally, I actually joked to everyone, this would actually feed me for 1.5 days, right? And I found it funny that the people I was with, they were all accustomed to eating such large meals, right? And to me, that's kind of like the opposite of fasting. You can train your body to get addicted to high amounts of food, as well as you can recondition it like you have it years ago and I have recently to eat less food. That's to me the key thing about fasting. You're actually solving the problem. You're actually reconditioning your body.
I agree completely. Absolutely. It's just great.
Yeah. Now, also too, longevity. I believe it to be true. Like, fasting helps with longevity. Tell us all about that, Hec.
Yeah. What I find interesting, as someone like myself now in their mid-50s and soon to be shifting into their late 50s, then what's important is to find tools that help our longevity, and this is again balancing everything out. For example, if you think of doing massive amounts of exercise, this is where you would argue that it could get to the point of reducing your benefits because of the amount you do. In other words, diminishing returns really was what I was looking at. So it's trying to find a nice balance of how much cardio you do, how much resistance training you do, your sleep, and all the bits that are going to aid to that longevity. So there was an interesting study, and there's always an argument in the running. You know, I like running. Is one of my things that I like doing. But there's always this argument of running is good, and and some of the experts recommend, for example, the 45-minute run, the 40-minute run, maybe an hour. Okay, some people will say, well, look, marathon running on the day is not ideal. If you're running for 4 hours, let's be honest, that's not good for the body. However, right, and it weakens your immune system on the day. However, all the training towards a marathon is healthy because you're out there running. So this is a law of diminishing returns. So how many marathons should you running a year is the obvious question, right? And should you be running marathons at all? If you were going for longevity, maybe you should never run more than a half marathon, which is 2 hours, for argument's sake. And this is this interesting balance and scale of how much is too much of a thing that then in the long term impacts on your longevity. And there's some experts that longevity is their thing. And for me, it's interesting. And obviously I don't have all the answers. I follow a lot of people. I like running marathons, but I do have to question, is this healthy for me? And at what point will I say, well, do you know what? I've had a good go at running marathons. As from X point, maybe I shouldn't run them anymore. Maybe I should only do one a year. These are the questions I haven't got answers for yet, but it's something I find very, very interesting. It's that balance of too much of something. That is something I thought was worth sharing with you, Edward.
Yeah, yeah. Because the thing that I find fascinating, again, going back to the fasting, one of the things that I've really admired is before I got into the intermittent fasting, I used to get pimples of all things, right? I used to get pimples. And I remember I'd always have a lot of dry skin. I also remember I'd always have stomach pain. I'd always have a sore stomach all the time. I haven't had a sore stomach ever since I started this whole fasting journey. And
how long have you been fasting for, Edward? I was going to ask you.
I've been I'll give you about 6 months, right? But
okay. So all of this year and towards so when you and me, because I was banging on the fasting drum, wasn't I? Back in the last summer, we were talking about this, and you probably heard me talk about it.
Yeah,
and it's something you thought I'd give it a go.
But if I can say so, the answer is 6 months, but I've been doing it really well for the past month. So I'm going to give this answer. I'm going to give this answer. Let's say I've been doing it for 3 months, right? Properly.
Okay, this year.
Fair enough. Like I sort of played with it last year, but I didn't nail it. But this year is when I said, I want to nail this fasting thing, right? And
brilliant.
And really the thing I find funny, funny about, it's free and you don't have to do any work, you just fast. But what I found amazing about it is I used to have a lot of stomach pain all the time. I always used to feel uncomfortable in the stomach. I love how the fasting actually gives the stomach a chance to heal. Because if you think about it, right, if you're eating like 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks a day, your poor stomach is literally working 24/7, 7 days a week. It's not very fun. It's not very fair on that organ, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a valid point. There's a few interesting bits to piggyback onto what you said. That gives your digestive system a break, right? There's liners that get done in the digestive system. Your colon has a liner. They're all different liners, and they're all different little creatures that need time to rest and recover, right? And guess what? Some nasty things inside, like food and like energy. When you starve them, let me just say, can't call you later. Great. When you starve things, guess what? Some of the nasties die and some of the good ones proliferate, which is interesting. There's something you may have heard about called leaky gut.
Yeah.
I'll share it with you, right? Is the proper term is permeability. When your digestive system has permeability, in other words, it has leakage. By doing, and that's often when you get the bloating of the stomach, people that are obese often have this. And you've probably heard the term inflammation. Leaky gut means where you got some stuff that should be in the gut, toxins, guess what? They get through the gut wall and they go elsewhere into your bloodstream. And that's why you get a lot of inflammation, right? When you do intermittent fasting, guess what? It reduces inflammation, helps with a lot of these different digestive symptoms because you're resting the organ itself. Okay? If you take it a step further, again, covering the element of longevity, once you get to 18 hours of fast, you say, I like finishing by 8. 8 to 8 is 12. We need another 6 hours, right? So if you do 6 on 8, that will take you to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? At that time, you start autophagy. What the heck is autophagy? This is where the cells at cellular level start eating the bits that are not working well, like organelles. A perfect example is your famous mitochondria, that the weak mitochondria die off, the ones that are knackered, and you basically repurpose all the internal cell pieces to make new elements. And this autophagy happens after about 18 hours. So if you were to do this, say, once or twice a week, you are literally having a cleanup at cell level on your own, which is quite remarkable. And again, alluding to what you said before, it's free. All you need to do is be a little bit hungry. Let me give you a couple of hacks. This is a good one for you, Ed. Do you like dark chocolate?
Yes.
Well, here's a good one for you. Dark chocolate, if you combine it with fasting, it may you chomp it. But by the way, ideally over 85%. Right?
Okay, yeah.
So let's just say you are going towards lunch, right? And you're going to skip a lunch. Just follow the logic, right?
As you do.
You have a coffee, you have a bit of dark chocolate, okay? and you're chomping slowly on the dark chocolate, your body thinks, great, we're having lunch. This is fantastic. So any anxiety you have drops because you're eating. You're eating dark chocolate, which has got virtually no calories at all, and it's got loads of good stuff inside, right? Dark chocolate. So I would recommend that you eat dark chocolate every day, a few bits, very little calories. You're going to have a bit of dark chocolate and coffee and just shift another 3 or 4 hours. Have a go at that and let me know how you get on.
I believe you. So in other words, I'm going to do it tomorrow, by the way, because I can imagine it now. So in a way, does that get rid of the urge? So let's say you're starving, right? Oh my God, I need lunch.
Yeah.
Does the whole coffee or tea and the dark chocolate thing, does that basically shut down the hunger reflex?
Yeah. And if you're a bit peckish, right, and you really want, I'll tell you a good one to put in your coffee, right? Put in double cream. Double cream, what it does, double cream has got a little bit of calories, but very, very small amount, but it won't bother your insulin markers or your receptors because it's mainly fat. And have you ever heard of the bulletproof coffee?
No, tell me.
Okay. The bulletproof coffee was developed about 10, 12 years ago by a very clever American, right? And what he found up in the Himalayas is that a very thick yak's milk, the funny hairy thing with horns up in the Himalayas, right? The yak's milk is the highest calorie milk around. And what they do up in the Himalayas, they have this tea with yak's milk. And what he does, the bulletproof coffee is essentially coffee with either cream or butter. Now you think butter's evil to put in coffee. That's something else that I've done. You put in butter, and what happens is so fatty, it will knock out your hunger for 2 hours because your body goes great. And because you're starting to burn and you're becoming metabolically more sensitive, flexible, you can burn off the fat, not affecting your insulin. So have a go if you like, and if you like a nice little bit, have a go, for example, for coffee, a little bit of butter. It may feel funky at first. Mix it in.
No.
That's okay.
Dark chocolate done. I'm not doing the butter. That's too out there for me. Dark chocolate done, butter, no way.
Listen, we can try that in the summer. Honestly, a lot of these things sound counterintuitive, but this is the whole idea between of bulletproof coffee. In the meantime, just have a couple of spoonfuls of double cream and double cream and dark chocolate, and you shift through a number of hours. So that's my advice. And you're muted, Edward. You're muted. Edward, you're muted.
Sorry, I coughed before and I muted myself and I forgot to turn it on.
There you go. Yourself. I saw you coughing, yes.
It's funny. I'm always telling off people for being muted, and I actually made the mistake myself. So that's really, really, really funny. So there you go. Hec, I love everything you've gone through, and I just want to say a big thank you. And Hec, I just want to come to closing thoughts. Can we get some closing thoughts from you? And please tell our fans how you can help them to win big.
Yes, I think one of the things I often mention is when we talk about health and fitness and longevity, it needs to be something that we can blend into our own life, right? You made a comment before about, going to the gym and maybe extra costs. We need to have tactics, and we covered in a lot of detail, for example, intermittent fasting, which again is tied into nutrition and is very useful. Other things that other times we've covered, things like sleep, is the one big element that I always bang on to my clients and make a big point about underlining is that sleep itself is more powerful than nutrition and exercise combined. So the one thing people can do to really get their health and fitness better is really focus on sleep, okay? Really get your sleep. The simple one is go to bed and get up at the same time. Say you're going to go to bed by 11, and this is something you and me talked about ages ago. You used to go to bed late, now you go to bed much earlier, and it's a game changer, right? So we're talking about go to bed, say 11 o'clock, 10:30, whatever, within a 15-20 minute window, and that's a huge one. So you need to make health, fitness, something that is manageable in your life. And by these 2 or 3 simple tactics, we've got intermittent fasting, we've got good sleep, and then go for a few walks, get that activity every day. Those 3 things will have a massive impact on your health and on your well-being.
Oh, fantastic. Heck, just amazing. Just before you go, if anyone listening wants to have a chat with you, can they have a quick discovery session with you to talk about their health, Heck?
That's a good point, Edward. And if they go onto my LinkedIn page, they will see they can actually click on the link and they can easily book a discovery call with me. And I can just, it's simple, just to know what they want, what they're looking for, and to see whether I can help.
Oh, Heck, thank you for your help. We love you, Heck. And to our fans out there, smash that like, share, comment, connect with Heck. And Heck, thank you again. Appreciate you, big man.
Brilliant, Edward. Lovely to see you and lovely to talk to you as always. Thanks ever so much.